My grandfather had moved inland from an island 21 miles out to sea called Martiniquez Island. And the island was so small that my aunts would have difficulty finding husbands. So my grandfather moved inland. And my dad built and Mom built a house next to my grandfather so that, we were close together there. It was, Maine has really cold winters, a lot of snow, has beautiful summers, and we had a place down on the ocean that my mother's father built, and my dad and Mom helped build that. My dad and I would take care of the garden. I'd be responsible for weeding. My sister would help my mom, and my mom would can a lot of the produce from the garden. We had some chickens, and so we were quite self-sufficient food-wise. So we had a very good life. Okay, DJ, I'll give you a little bit of background on sign language and working with the deaf. To begin with, Mr. Gallaudet, who lived in Washington, D.C., had a big plantation, I guess you would call it, and had a lot of workers there. And among some of the workers were children who were born deaf. And he was concerned that they were not being educated. So he found out that Great Britain had a way of dealing with the deaf and teaching them, and their method was to develop speech and to develop lip reading. That is both a difficult type thing to do when you can't hear. So he went to Great Britain in England and asked them if they would show him how they worked with the deaf. Well, in those years, that was back a long time ago, families owned what we would call the business of working with the deaf. They were called guilds, and this family that was teaching the deaf refused to share their knowledge with him because it was their life's work. So he found out that France also had work with the deaf, only they were more interested in using signs in order to communicate. So the French agreed to helping him, and they sent one of the men, his name was Leclerc, back to the United States with Mr. Gallaudet, and they established a school for the deaf children. So the signs, of course, often stood for a specific word, like with bread. When you think of French bread, and you have this big long piece of bread, and you cut off pieces as you need it. So that's the sign for bread. And we is another word, W-E, that means me and you. So this is we, the W, we. So there are a lot of different words that are used, like a woman is the person with the bonnet string, and this baby. A man is the man when you grab the cap of the bill of the cap, and holding the baby would be your father. So in relationship to the we, like that, our would be like with an O, meaning me, and you out there, and back to me, our, meaning this group. Anyway, there's a lot of different signs and a lot of stories they go with the signs. But for the most part, Gallaudet established the first school, and it was called Kendall School, and then it eventually developed into a college, and now it's a university. And I taught there for a good many years. I had many deaf friends, and so they gave me a name. The deaf will, the students especially, will give a teacher a name depending on what they think about her. Well, my name is Norton, strict. So I didn't let kids get by with too much in my classroom. So that was my name, Norton. It wasn't done in a mean way. It was just, that's what she is. She's strict. Well, in looking back, I think for the most part, the events that were happening, like up until the war, of course World War I had finished after when I was born, but there were still impacts from that. Men that were gassed and had, terrible repercussions from that. Then when World War II came along, then immediately all of us kids, for example, were busy collecting rubber bands and collecting tin, collecting things for the war effort. So everybody began to feel like they were a part of trying to do these different things, which was good. But I think then, of course, there were those who were involved with some of the things like down there at Cundy's, being on the coast. You have the foreign submarines and things like that coming in. You have foreign planes flying over. And I was a plane spotter, along with other people down in there. A good deal. I think we need to learn respect for the younger generation and listen to what it is they're trying to say. Have to listen to what it is that's confusing for them and giving them problems. We don't have all the answers. Never have, never will have. And it has to be a combination of the old and the young. It took the past to make the future. It will always be that way. There will also need to be more openness and support between the generations to really get a smoother way of doing things. They need to know some of the problems that the older generations had to deal with in order to accomplish the things that they did. Like my generation is called the greatest generation. Well, that was because of the war and all the things that my generation did.